Welcome to the Dallas Duo podcast,
your weekly wellness coffee date.
I'm Whitney Stuart.
And I'm Andrea Overturf.
We're friends in Dallas, always looking for the best ways to optimize our health
and have fun along the way. Today, we want to talk all about DEXA scans and why they are superior to an InBody or the scale.
Or maybe even just like taking measurements.
Yes.
Or BMI. Yeah. So if you are new to the podcast, we always break down like the latest, greatest. And as a dietitian, something that I constantly run into is patients wanting to track their body change. And I understand that tracking is powerful. But what we know is that the scale doesn't tell us the whole story, that body composition matters. And when I say body composition, I'm talking about the total entity of what your body is made of, which is more than just water and muscle and fat and tissue. We want to get a really strong idea of what that composition is, because that is where the data shows our greatest risk or benefit for long-term health, which is usually what I'm focused on with patients. So if patients come to me and say, I want to lose 10 pounds, I say, no, I think what you're saying is that you want to lose 10 pounds of fat. And in order to do that, it's going to look different than just scale weight. And we can't just use your scale to measure that. So even though you may have a really lovely scale at home that says it tells you your body fat, it's probably wrong. And the gold standard is the DEXA. InBody is a close second. That's BIA, bioimpedance analysis, that's sending a signal through your body. It's highly sensitive and affected by hydration, though, and movement. And so I have seen as great as like 10 to 14% error with that, where the DEXA is anywhere from like, I think 2 to 5% error.
Yeah, much lower margin.
And what we see for accuracy. Now, some people will say, well, what about hydrostatic weighing? Which if you were like me, you got put into a dunk tank in college and had to hold your breath, and they would do your body fat that way, which is very uncomfortable and wet and expensive. And so the DEXA is really our goal. And if you live in a major city like Dallas, you can get a DEXA for as cheap as $50. If you're paying more than $50, please stop. There are options around town. There are quite a few different companies that offer it. I use this for my patients because it helps them understand the numbers that matter. Your lean mass number really matters as we age. We talked about this a lot on the podcast, like strategic ways to age. And if we don't know how much lean mass we have in our early 30s, we want to know that value so that we can try to maintain it as we age. And then also our body fat percentage, and if we're carrying visceral fat.
I'm excited to talk about this with you because I know you use this as a very powerful tool with your clients. I recently got a DEXA, and of course I'm looking at everything, but then I need like to translate that to like, what are my goals? How do I get there based on this data that I have? And I know that you're so good at breaking all of that down. So I'm excited to talk about it.
And you've done one. So tell us about like your experience, like how long it took, like pros and cons to the experience.
Yes, it's a very easy experience. You can book online if you're in Dallas. We use Body Spec, and I think they're in multiple
They have like a mobile truck.
They have mobile things. So I went in. The only thing is like you can't eat for a certain amount of time before. It has to be like 3 or 4 hours. So it's not like completely fasted.
They say they don't want the body to be like dynamic. You haven't worked out, you haven't sweated, you haven't eaten. Like there's homeostasis within the body.
That's the biggest thing. So like very easy prep, if you want to call it that. And then you go in, and I mean, the scan itself takes less than 2 minutes. You just lay there. I actually did a reel about it showing the experience, but it's very quick, and you actually get your results within like 10 minutes on your phone. So you get that quick information, and they actually really do a good job also of breaking it down into, different categories like lean body mass, visceral fat. There's several categories. I think they even tell you your RMR, breaking down even as far as like how much muscle mass is on each side of your body, where you're carrying your muscle, where you're carrying your fat. So it is really helpful to see an overall picture of, where you are. It's a good baseline.
My right leg is stronger than my left leg by like 0.8 pounds. I was like, whoa, right leg, calm down. It is really powerful. It's like under 10 minutes, $49. I have people do it annually or sometimes up to twice a year if we're working on body change. But the one thing that I love is that I'm working with clients on becoming more metabolically efficient, which means that they have more muscle because muscle tissue is active and less fat. And the one piece of this that I really love is that it shows your android fat and visceral fat. So android fat is belly fat, and we worry about that a lot of times because it increasing your risk for metabolic and cardiovascular disease. So if I have a patient who is, say, like 100 pounds and is not worried about weight loss and is just working on, like, say, blood sugar, but we do a DEXA and I see that she has very high fat levels, like a skinny fat patient, essentially. She has very low muscle mass and she has high levels of android fat. This makes me concerned for her overall health, not just her weight. The scale would never tell us that. The scale and a BMI would say she's normal, she's healthy, we don't need to focus on weight loss. And I would say that we don't need to focus on weight loss, we need to focus on body recomposition, meaning exchanging fat for muscle so that she ages well, so she's strong, so that as she ages and her metabolism slowly starts to drop from muscle loss, that she's built a lot of muscle to spare her some margin in the first place. My goal right now is building as much muscle as possible because I know that I'm headed on a downward trajectory as I age, and I want to prevent that as much as I can. And if I know that muscle keeps me insulin sensitive, using carbohydrates well, sleeping well, aging well, I'm going to do that.
I'm glad you bring up that term muscle recomposition because I don't think a lot of people understand what that means. So you're saying that like if you're someone who maybe doesn't need to lose weight but you want to build more muscle, you have a higher body fat, that would be more of what you're talking about
Like
when
the
you
scale
say
probably won't change at
right.
home. And I was just talking to a client about this. I have DEXAs that are, oh my gosh, 7 or 9 years apart. And my body fat or my body weight is within the same 5 pounds, but I have put on 9 pounds of muscle and lost 5% body fat. And my body looks so different than it does from 7 years ago. But I know it's stronger, it's leaner, it burns more calories, it's more metabolically active. We want more active tissue on our body, which is going to help us in the long run. And I think the DEXA is a powerful tool because I have a lot of clients that don't really understand the numerical value of weight loss. Like they come to me and they're like, I need to lose 5 pounds. But when we have the DEXA, we can actually see how much fat they need to lose to be in a healthy range. So for females, 20 to 30% body fat is a general overarching term. We might get more nuance based on like where you're at and your body goals, etc. But 20 to 30 is a like general prescribed healthy goal to be. If I have individuals who are 40%, we know that we have 10% body fat to lose, and we can literally calculate how many pounds of body fat we need to lose. And that often is a lot less than what people think it is. And it's just helpful to have, I think, accurate scientific data driving your results. And you can go back and get retested and see how far you've gotten. I just had a patient who like lost 3 pounds of fat and gained 3 pounds of muscle, and the scale was net zero, but she had made huge changes inside.
So do you think this helps your patients or anyone, motivation wise, just to understand it more in terms of that versus just a number on the scale? Because sometimes people can see the number on the scale go up.
Yeah.
And maybe they gain muscle and then they get like, if they have a fat loss goal or weight loss goal, they get really discouraged about that. So do you feel like this helps when you're explaining that?
I do like it because I don't own a scale. I have a history of disordered eating. It just doesn't work for me. And honestly, as a female, I feel like there's very few female patients that benefit from a scale. Your body changes so much week to week from a hydration status, from where you're at in your cycle, if you're retaining water, if you had salty food, if you're flying. Most of my clients are busy, they're consultants. And so this idea of like basing their value or worth or even progress on the scale is really annoying to me. Like I'm like, hey, head down, do the work, do the protocol for the next 3 months, and then get on the DEXA and see where we're at. And then, we may do it again. But for me, I did it and it actually kind of quieted down some of the things that I was worried about. Like I'm not focused on a week by week basis. I'm almost working on my body from like a quarterly basis or a bi-yearly, biannual basis. And that I think has been easier to just have an understanding that the body does not change instantaneously. If it does, that's a concern. That changes take time. And the DEXA is going to show the accuracy of that, because I would hate for you to get on your scale at home and then somebody else's scale and them not be calibrated. And you're like, well, I gained 7 pounds, but you actually didn't. It was just the chips and salsa from the night before. I want efficiency and I want accuracy for my clients. And I feel like the DEXA does both.
It's very important. I think you mentioned like when you're thinking about goals, sometimes 3 to 4 months isn't enough time. Like really, I think 6 months minimum is the time you need to, really be able to see if something that you're doing is working, whether you're working on building muscle or whatever that goal is. I think when you say bi-yearly,
Well,
I
and
think
fat
that's
loss,
so
fat
accurate.
loss, and like let's talk about like the optimal trajectory and optimal pace of fat loss and muscle gain. So for females, losing a half to 1 pound per week is really where we max out in the population. This is more for a GLP-1 peptide crowd. This does not necessarily apply to that crowd because it's being catalyzed by medical prescription peptides. For an individual who is working on weight loss, when they are anywhere from even a quarter to a half pound per week, so that is no more than 2 pounds per month, I am applauding them. That is incredible. So when you think over 6 months, you may not see more than 12 pounds loss when you're working your tush off in a calorie deficit. We are not meant to be in a calorie deficit 24/7, but at the same time, we usually lose muscle as we lose fat. It's common. So even if you're gaining muscle, you may be gaining a little bit slower if you're also losing fat at the same time. It's pretty hard to do both. But like shout out to my amazing trainer, Julie Bernard. I was like, hey, like I've been really hitting it hard with progressive overload. I'm so pumped. I want to see how much change I've made. And it had only been 4 months since my last DEXA. And she's like, you really need to give it 2 more months for significant data to show. For the female body, even putting on like 5 pounds in a year is a lot. So when you think about that from a month to month basis, that's like nothing, nothing
You're not going to see
tangible.
that in 3
No.
months.
So like the people you see who are shredded online, like, yes, it took them probably a decade to get there. Have they been maintaining it for the past 3 decades? Sure. But to get to that point takes time. So if you're like new to the gym journey, don't lose hope, but just be aware that it takes longer than you think to build muscle.
Maintenance is important too.
Yeah.
Like when I went for mine, I was initially like really disappointed. It had been 6 years. So I had one when I was 39 and I'm 46 now. So a lot has changed since then. I went in thinking like, wow, I've been increasing my weights. I lift weights more times a week now. All of that. I'm trying to do all the right things when it comes to eating enough protein and in my diet. And it was literally the same, like within like a tenth of a decimal, the same as it was 6 years ago. My weight is the same. So like, that's good. I mean, that's not the part I was focusing on. I was more focusing on, the body fat and muscle mass. And
They're
so
like, great job, no change.
yeah. So I was like, wait, like this is actually crazy. And so I was talking about it with my husband and he was just like, well, but think about like all your body's been through in the last 6 years. The fact that you held on to and preserved your muscle throughout like the whole, the roller coaster of chaos that is perimenopause. He's like,
like maintenance is a win.
Yeah. Like that's a win for you. Like you should actually be excited. So then I was like, oh, okay.
We just live in a world where like, if you're not progressing or like crushing it, or like getting smaller, then it's not a win. And it actually might be. So I like this because it gives my patients the right data and accurate enough data for them to make goals that matter. To say like, I want to reduce my visceral fat because that sits around my organs and that puts me at risk for cardiovascular disease, right? Like we can make those very specific goals and we can set up their, macronutrients. I would say like their calorie needs and their macronutrients and even portions. It helps me decide, is this patient actually eating enough? I have a patient who has lost muscle this year. And I'm like, hey, hon, like, I have a feeling we're training too hard. We're under eating. We're not doing our body a favor to build muscle like your goals state. And so it helps us give educated decisions as a provider. I really love it because I can see like, wow, you're making progress, or wow, maybe you're overworking. That was my story. I was doing way too much cardio and not enough strength, and I wasn't seeing gains and I was annoyed. But once I had the data, I started to really ask myself honestly, like, are you actually doing the things to move the needle in the gym that you need to? Probably not.
Yeah, it gives you a different scope to evaluate from, what you're actually doing.
Yeah. And like, I mean, data is so powerful in my practice, as much data as I can use. Functional labs, CGM data for my diabetes patients, the DEXA are all tools that we can utilize.
And not to mention, it does measure your bone density as well, which is another metric that we're super important, especially as we get into our 30s, 40s, and beyond.
So with the DEXA does measure bone density, but its accuracy on bone density is not gold standard. So it's not diagnostic, where for body fat and muscle, it is accurate enough to be considered like the gold standard. But for bone density, it could give you an idea of where you sit, but like mine shows mine is low. And I've had my T-score done in office with an endocrinologist on another level grade DEXA, and it was fine. And so it's like a good insight, but it's not for evaluation or diagnosis. Like you couldn't look at it and be like, oh, I have osteopenia or I have osteoporosis. But it is a nice, accurate piece they give. The other factor is the RMR, or resting metabolic rate. Now, this is really powerful. Most of my clients come in thinking like, well, I need to eat 1,200 calories. And I have very rarely seen a resting metabolic rate under 1,400 calories, unless I've had like a long starved patient that has very little muscle on her body, or maybe somebody who's like 4'11" and petite. But most of my patients, when we look at that number, again, it gives them the data to say, oh, even at rest, I need 1,400 calories.
And that's just literally doing nothing.
Which means I need at least 30% of that coming from protein, which is definitely more than 100 grams. And that 35 grams of fiber starts giving, again, data to show what's needed to move an active, dynamic body. And I think a lot of times we just lose sight of that in like the world of food noise and instant gratification and like less is more.
Well, and I even think back to the years of like when it was like, oh, this like 1,200 to 1,500 calorie diet, that's not enough. You know,
Yeah, it's not enough.
If you're really looking at what your body's doing at rest, you need so much more than that.
Yeah. So this is like one of those tools where I say like, hey, your DEXA shows you, like for mine, my RMR has really increased from gaining so much muscle, which I love to see. Like, I'm like, oh, look, I can eat more. You know, one of my friends is like, I just build muscle so that I can eat more food. That is literally my goal, is like, I want to eat more food, so I'm building more muscle. And so to be aware, you know, like if you like to eat food, then you need to be building muscle, because that is the thing that burns calories. Like that's the thing that needs calories. Like, you know, you take yourself from like a Mini Cooper to a Hummer essentially by doing so.
I love that analogy.
So make your body, you know, you need more fuel. But again, when we undereat under that resting metabolic rate, we tend to be putting ourselves in, you know, it's not scientific like starvation mode, but we are eating in likely too big of a deficit. And those big deficits are what cause people to say on my discovery call, I feel out of control with food. I can't stop when I eat. I have a raging sweet tooth. Something comes around and I can't have just one. It's
over-restrictive.
It's probably because you're over-restricting. When we over-restrict, the body has eyes bigger than the stomach and feels like it can handle more because it is hungry. And when we're hungry, we can't make accurate decisions.
Well, and I even think like looking back to times when, you know, I've undereaten or been overly restrictive in my past, I felt like I had such a sweet tooth, like I needed sugar all the time. And I don't feel that way anymore. So it's really crazy how you explain that. If you have a client come in and that's the way you explain that to them, if that's how they're feeling, they're probably under eating.
Yeah. I think that, you know, with everybody, like, you know, too much data and like counting calories and different things can feel restrictive to people. But I think that the DEXA is actually one that I have felt like empowered by. Like, look at the progress I'm making. I don't wake up every day and see like, oh, look, like my biceps look bigger. I can't see the changes. So the DEXA is confirming what's actually happening internally and that I may be making my body more healthy without being aware of it. I think it's probably like the number one thing I recommend, even on discovery calls. I tell people, like, even if you're not going to work with me, like, please make sure that you're not using the scale as your guide. Please use a DEXA instead. Sometimes you have to go to like a college campus if you're in a smaller town, or like a sports medicine facility. But if you are in Dallas or Seattle or Oklahoma, we have BodySpec and we have a discount link for you that I think knocks it down to like $45.
Yeah. If you sign up, I think if you sign up to get like 2 within the year, it's a little bit less. Because I just did like a one-time one and it was like 60 something.
Yeah.
Which
I think my link attaches like $5 off.
Oh, nice. Okay, we'll have to put
with
that.
it too. And then, I mean, talk about just like, don't waste your money. Like, in my opinion, as your dietitian, don't waste your money on like a Hume Health home scale. Like, don't waste your money on a fancy scale at home. I don't think you need to weigh in that much. I think you need to focus on other things, like you can track your steps, you can track your weights, and if you're going heavy, but you don't need to track your weight that often. You can do your DEXA twice a year or once a year instead.
What are some other things you'd recommend to clients in terms of the metrics that matter, or like if it's someone who is into tracking things other than the DEXA?
Good question. So the Aura or the Whoop are great tools because it shows your sleep. Sleep is incredibly important. So making sure that you're getting deep REM sleep is really important. Hot tip, alcohol cuts your REM sleep. Things are really important for hormone health, for building muscle, for having regenerative time to just let your body rebuild. Beyond those, tracking your cycle. If you are in your 30s and you're not tracking your cycle in some capacity, you need to be.
Start.
As your cycle shortens, that is like one of the very first signs of perimenopause, and perimenopause can start as early as your early 30s. And so tracking your cycle and tracking your sleep would be the two things beyond steps. A lot of my clients don't want to wear like a Fitbit or an Aura or a Whoop. I just have them get a freaking pedometer. They're like $3 now. You just clip it on at work and just get an idea of how sedentary and or active you are per day. But most of my clients are way overshooting their calories and undershooting their activity. And they find that they don't need to eat less. They just need to move more throughout the day. And it just takes like a little bit of awareness. And that dinky little pedometer really helps with that.
Yeah. And it's nice that it's not like a whole other device. Like, I mean, it is like a little thing, but it's not like a whole other account.
Yeah. And it just gives you perspective. Like
whatever.
You thought your office day was 2,000 of steps and you're taking like 200, So
I love that.
Good tracking tools.
All right. Well, is there anything else you would recommend in terms of, like you said, DEXA, maybe like twice a year?
I mean, annual labs, right? Like
labs.
I'm a huge annual labs. And we've talked about this, but like labs are so incredibly important. Before anything else, I'm really probably looking at labs. It's so hard for me to see patients now and to just assess them off of their diet. Like maybe some dietitians take that approach, but like I want the data. I want to be accurate. I would never want to tell you to like eat more, iron-rich foods when your iron is high, or eat less vitamin D, when you don't need to. Like I want to be so efficient with our actions to make a difference for you.
I think on that note, one of the biggest messages is don't depend on the scale for for where your progress is, or
exactly.
Your
the scale is not giving you the full picture.
Anything else before we end on the DEXA?
No, I love this. I mean, I think that like everyone needs a DEXA.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree.
It's really insightful.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, we'll share we'll share her link in the notes with the discount and any other resources that we have with it.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.